Welcome to the Frontline podcast, brought to you in association with the Atla Group. Atla Group is a collaboration of businesses with a collective history of over 130 years, bringing financial solution to its clients in the world of accountancy, audit, advisory, fiduciary and retirement benefit solutions. Visit atla.im today. On the Frontline podcast, we chat to leaders in business and successful entrepreneurs to bring you their in-depth and bite-sized opinions that will add value to you and your mind.
Lindsay and Phil, thank you for joining me today. Much appreciated. So, Lindsay, I know you spend a lot of time in South Africa. Perhaps before we come on to that, Phil, perhaps you can just give the audience a little bit of information around Brooks Macdonald, and particularly at this moment in time, we're in early April, why Lindsay's on the Isle of Man and what's going on at Brooks Macdonald.
Thanks. So Brooks Macdonald we celebrated our 30th birthday last year, and as of the latter part of last year, in November, we received our licence to operate here on the Isle of Man. So proud and pleased to be here, to build a business here. Last night we had our launch event, and as part of that we had a number of colleagues come up to support us and meet the people in the business and wider community who have been so welcoming for us here. Lindsay's our head of business development, but also, as you'll recognise from his accent, is a South African with significant experience over many, I won't say his age, but over a couple of decades building a network and business relationships in South Africa, which is an important part of our business. And we recognise also in the Isle of Man there are so many South Africans with strong and established links there, and we're keen to support partners here to support clients and businesses in South Africa.
So before we get on to Lindsay, just your experience then, we're very pro Isle of Man obviously here. How was that experience of getting fully licensed and going through that process over the last number of years with the Isle of Man PLC?
Seamless is the answer now, and I don't know whether that's because it was during a pandemic. I suspect it's more a reflection about how flexible people have been. So both from a legal side of things, working with DQ Associates, with the regulator at every touch point, and with Finance Isle of Man as well, we've been highly supported all the way through, and can't say enough positive things on that side. Huge advocates in the process. Has been great. I can't really take any credit for that because I feel like a goal hanger in a five-a-side game. All the work was really done by my colleagues within Brooks and those people I've mentioned. But no, very pleased and happy to be where we are.
Yeah, that's good. That's good to hear. So, Lindsay, thanks for joining us. Much appreciated. So let's chat a little bit about South Africa. Strong, as Phil touched on, strong connections to South Africa. Absolutely. With the Isle of Man. What do you see down there at the moment? How's your experiences with travelling back and forth now that we can travel as well?
Yes, exactly, and clearly with COVID, we've all had travel restrictions, both in terms of entering South Africa as well as exiting the island locations, Isle of Man, Jersey, and so forth. Certainly, what we've experienced over a number of years now is a continued enthusiasm amongst South Africans to properly diversify wealth offshore. And getting out to South Africa regularly as we do, and as we always have for many years, that hasn't changed in any way. We're working with financial advisors in South Africa, working with trustees. There's an ongoing demand to recognise that holding some of your value, some of your wealth outside of South Africa, outside of the local South African rand, in a well-regulated jurisdiction such as the Isle of Man, with quality established firms, is the right, sensible thing to do. And many years ago, there were different drivers for this kind of offshore exposure. But certainly today, people are recognising that it makes absolute sense to be global in terms of your thinking and in terms of your wealth diversification. So that is certainly the case. If one looks back to recent times, the increasing instability in the world has certainly caused clients to think a little bit more about the safety of their wealth. What happened in South Africa last year with some of the unrest clearly caused people to reconsider as well and think about diversification. So these are all the constant drivers certainly that have allowed clients to continue to support the islands.
And you'll reach into there, certainly. We all hate talking about COVID, but during that period, how was that? How did you find that as a business, and then interacting, and the South Africans interacting with you back out of South Africa?
Yeah, sure. So over the last couple of years, the interactions have really gone through technology. So what we found is the lack of travel hasn't prevented the continued management of relationships, engagement with existing clients, supporting existing clients, and of course opening new business with South Africans. So using video conferencing, email, phone calls, that technology has allowed us to continue to build a business without too much delay. Mm-hmm. But as we all know, nothing beats face-to-face engagement. And whilst the last couple of years we've continued to progress and engage fully with our South African clients and partners, getting back out on the road, getting back down to South Africa is a very important part of our engagement.
Touched on there about the Isle of Man licence. Perhaps important for people that, one, don't live on the moon and haven't come across, or do live on the moon, sorry, and haven't come across Brooks. Maybe a quick snapshot of what you do in South Africa, and I suppose importantly, the fact you're licensed down there as well. Do you want to just touch on that for the listeners?
Absolutely, thank you. So as a business, we manage over 17 billion sterling. We are listed on the London Stock Exchange. We have been since 2005, AIM listed. So we bring into South Africa a well-established listed business with significant experience in managing money. One of the requirements in South Africa, of course, which most listeners will be aware of, is the requirement as an asset manager to be suitably regulated in South Africa. And the primary reason for that is not to protect ourselves, is to protect our clients. Mm-hmm. So Brooks Macdonald, we are fully regulated. We have a Category 1 license from the South African regulator, which of course is maintained. We have our own compliance officer based out in South Africa who makes sure that everything we're doing is aligned to local regulation. And the most important element, and this has never happened, of course, I hasten to add, but if a South African client was in any way ever uncomfortable about the relationship or felt there was issues, he is able to access the local ombudsman and the local regulator, whereas, of course, if we were not a regulated firm, that activity would have to take place by moving across to the Isle of Man or Jersey and having that type of discussion.
So client comfort.
That client comfort. South Africans know, as I say, never happened, but it means that clients know that whilst we're a long way away physically, in terms of regulation, we are very much part of the South African landscape.
Yeah, absolutely. So, in regard to, I suppose, and chatting with, let's call it the next generation of South Africans, the generating wealth, what are you seeing in that space? Are you seeing that they want to diversify more? Externalise money, not externalise, bring money back and help the local economy? What's the feel there?
There's always been a range of drivers for investing offshore, but the focus and the shift, does vary over time. And certainly in my more recent experience, what we're seeing is wealthy South African families not necessarily seeking immigration and externalising of funds to leave the country, but a common expression is we want to live in the sun but keep our money in the shade. Obviously talking about the Isle of Man in that case, but recognising that the quality of life living in South Africa it's a wonderful country, it's a beautiful country, and we all know that. But what is not sensible necessarily is to maintain all one's wealth in the country. And what we're seeing as well is an interest from families to look at appropriate structure of their wealth offshore for succession planning, asset protection, and in many cases looking at their children potentially studying and going to university in a country outside of South Africa. Not that that's a criticism of the South African academic world, it's more about allowing their children to gain more global experience. We all live and work in an increasingly global environment with technology and so forth. And for the children of wealthy families to potentially have access to a university in the UK or America or Australia or elsewhere, building up funds offshore to support economically, that opportunity is an increasing area of interest.
Yeah, okay. And not to ask a too negative question, I suppose, but there's a rumour certainly at the moment, and whether by the time the podcast is out has changed,
Sure.
South Africa's coming on somewhat pressure in regard to going on the naughty list.
Yep.
What's the latest position that you're aware of? Appreciating we're talking here on about the 8th of April, and this might be slightly changed, but how are you seeing that? I presume obviously you get clients asking you those questions, and how do you appease them in that regard?
Certainly that is something that we pay very, very close attention to. The South African authorities are clearly very keen to make sure that all standards and requirements are met to prevent that situation from arising. And being an optimist, we continue to hope that South Africa's high quality regulation is recognised and that decision is not ultimately made and implemented. But one has to consider that it may well be. And it doesn't mean that we necessarily have to change our approach to South Africa in any dramatic way. What it does mean, unfortunately, for clients as well, is we have to just dig that bit deeper in terms of being comfortable with the clients that come on board, particularly around things like source of wealth, source of funds. So we're all living in a world where regulation for the right reasons is in place and applies very much to investing globally. But if a jurisdiction is on a so-called grey list, it does mean that there are higher standards that have to be applied.
Yeah.
Certain business may no longer be able to be conducted, but what we expect is that South Africa would not sit on their hands in this case, and work would be done to ensure that standards are met and they can be removed from any grey list should that happen.
Yeah, okay, interesting. Well, thanks for joining. One quick question, maybe just throw back to you, Phil, in regard to general investment philosophy of the business as a whole. Very bespoke to clients, a very niche market. Why would you pitch yourselves? If I'm a client now, where would you pitch yourself? Other than I've got no money, so you're wasting your time with me. But perhaps some listeners out there that have some wealth that need a bit of help and management.
Just a light question there.
Yeah.
To end it, I think our investment proposition has been honed over 30 years. We have 86 investment managers across the business, of which 11 offices across the UK and 3 now, us being the third internationally, Jersey, Guernsey and here. And all those guys feed in from a research perspective to form the top-down view of the world. Which parts of the world should we be investing in, what kind of asset classes and in what proportions, and then obviously from a bottom-up perspective, what vehicles do we use, what instruments do we use to populate that view of the world. And we do that regularly. Now, of course, all our peers will celebrate their own investment process, and of course there will be points of difference. I think internationally, once we go from that central investment process, there is an international overlay, and that will take into account the nuances of people investing internationally. So the nature of UK site assets and making sure that that's managed appropriately, and we'll provide solutions, whether that be based on risk or on objectives, or indeed if someone's got an appropriate amount to invest, we can do that on a fully bespoke basis as well. So we do offer that in sterling, of course. We do offer that in US dollars, and we will also offer that in euros. And we are truly international. So we have clients in around 150 countries. And we have strategic partners, whether that be on the trust side, working with intermediaries, or indeed private clients in the major jurisdictions internationally as well. So we are experienced. And we're well resourced and looking to build on that and plug into that economies of scale from the new office here on the Isle of Man.
Okay, great. Certainly that's our experience as well from dealing with you guys. So thanks again for coming in, much appreciated. We'll stick some links in our footer notes to websites, etc., so people can reach out to and your LinkedIn profiles to reach out. So thanks again for your time and thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Martin.
Thanks, Martin. Appreciate the opportunity.
Pleasure. Thanks for listening, everyone.